Ha! Look at them, all the effort, all the scheming, every angle calculated, every whisper coordinated, every move rehearsed to perfection. And for what? For the illusion that they could trap you. They thought they could predict you, map you, control you. They believed you were small, compliant, understandable. They believed in a version of you that no longer exists. And that's the mistake that's going to haunt them forever. Because you didn't just slip away from the corner they built. You didn't just avoid their plan. You obliterated the entire premise by evolving beyond it before it ever touched you. They studied you like an experiment. Each movement catalogued, each reaction noted, every weakness recorded. They convinced themselves they were clever, thinking their precision would guarantee your downfall. They didn't see the pattern of their own fragility mirrored in their strategy. They didn't see that every ounce of effort they invested to trap you only highlighted their obsession with controlling what they could never dominate. They didn't see that while they were building a cage, you were already walking out of the framework of their reality entirely. And oh, the irony is exquisite. They worked tirelessly to corner you, believing in their own brilliance, and the very brilliance they worshipped blinded them to the truth. You were never their prey. You were the predator in the room they thought they owned. Every plan they crafted was an audition for their own exposure. Every alliance they formed was a mirror reflecting their own fear. Every smile they used as camouflage was a confession of insecurity they didn't recognize. Here's what they missed. Dominance isn't about fighting every battle. Dominance isn't about proving yourself in their arena. Dominance is about erasing yourself from the battlefield they assume exists. It's about showing up in their minds without being there in reality. It's about existing on a plane where their weapons, their manipulations, their schemes, their social engineering bounce off like pebbles against steel. They built a theater of control, a stage designed to break you publicly and irreversibly. They positioned witnesses. They whispered promises of victory. They rehearsed the narrative with the pride of gods, orchestrating fate. And then on the day of reckoning, they found an empty stage. No reaction, no fear, no collapse. Just the ghost of someone who had left the room weeks, months, even years before. Because you understand something they never will. Power isn't demonstrated, it's inherent. You don't need to argue. You don't need to justify. You don't need to engage in the performance of dominance they so desperately crave to witness. You exist as the consequence of their own miscalculation, and that existence is lethal. Think about it. Every manipulation, every calculated attack, every perfect setup they built, it's all a monument to their desperation, and in their desperate efforts to control you, they revealed themselves. Every strategy betrayed insecurity. Every plan screamed fear. Every coordinated attack broadcasted weakness. They were so busy orchestrating your destruction that they forgot to defend against their own exposure. While they were obsessed with the idea of defeating you, you were constructing a fortress of irrelevance to them. You weren't hiding, you weren't avoiding, you were ascending. And every layer of your growth was a blade slicing through the confidence they held as armor. Their plans were designed for someone else, someone predictable, someone malleable, someone dependent. Not you. And this is where it becomes exquisite, savage. Their panic doesn't come from their failure. It comes from their inability to comprehend it. They can't figure out what happened. They can't find a reason. They can't reconcile the effort they invested with the absence of results. Every calculation they made is meaningless against someone who refuses to exist according to their rules. And watching them unravel mentally, quietly, internally, while you remain untouched, that is the most brutal, surgical victory of all. You didn't fight. You didn't lash out. You didn't justify yourself. You simply became someone their entire plan wasn't designed to handle. And now every effort they make, every attempt to corner you again, every whisper of strategy falls into irrelevance. Their obsession is futile because they no longer operate on your frequency. Their maps, their scripts, their calculations, nothing aligns with the trajectory you've already taken. Let's dissect the psychology of it. People who corner others are often the most insecure. They overcompensate with plans, alliances, and performances because they fear confrontation. They fear exposure. They fear losing. And because they cannot bear to face their own inadequacy, they project that need for control onto the world. You see this, you dissect it, and instead of reacting in fear or anger, you observe and evolve. The quietest power is the most destructive. A hurricane announces itself. A predator stalks silently until the kill is inevitable. And make no mistake, their panic now is invisible to the world, but it's real. Every interaction is a mirror reflecting their own failed predictions. Every attempt to provoke you exposes their continued irrelevance. Every whisper of conspiracy against you only cements their weakness because you've already removed yourself from their domain entirely. They're screaming into a void of your absence, while you construct your empire in dimensions they can't access. This is where most people fail to understand the magnitude of what's happening. They think absence is passive. They think ignoring their efforts is simple. They think not reacting is inaction. They are wrong. Absence in this context is offensive. Absence is a weapon. Absence is control without exertion. Every day you remain unaffected, every day you refuse to validate their schemes, is another day they collapse under the weight of their own overestimation. You've become untouchable, not by force, but by comprehension. You've dissected the system, identified the weak points, and removed yourself entirely from the battlefield they assumed existed. Their cage was never too small for you. It was too rigid for a mind like yours. Their walls were never high enough to trap you. They were made of the wrong material, and now they face the most humiliating truth imaginable. The effort they worshipped, the brilliance they bragged about, the traps they built, were all irrelevant because you evolved beyond their reach. And the beauty is, it's all quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't boast. It doesn't demand acknowledgement. It simply exists, a living testament to their error. Every misstep they make now, every attempt to salvage control, only highlights their inadequacy. Every ally they whisper to, every audience they try to sway, sees the cracks in their authority because you've already rewritten the rules. You've torn the mask off the mastermind, not by confrontation, not by exposure, but by transcendence. You've forced them to face a reality they cannot process, that you are operating on a plane of dominance they cannot reach. And the fear they feel, the quiet, gnawing, destabilizing fear, is more effective than any battle you could fight. It is proof of control so complete that you never lifted a hand. It is proof that mastery isn't about movement, but about the space you occupy, the presence you carry, the untouchable power that radiates without declaration. And now, as their confusion turns into obsession, as their strategies become frantic attempts to catch up, you prepare for the next stage. Not retaliation, not reaction, not explanation, but expansion. Growth that renders their attacks obsolete. Evolution that makes their designs meaningless. dominance that transforms their confidence into chaos. You are no longer part of their game. You are the reason their game fails. You are the invisible force that erases their relevance while building your own universe. Because here's the truth they never saw coming. The moment you stopped defending, you started advancing. The moment you stopped explaining, you started evolving. And the moment you stopped seeking their approval, you unlocked a version of yourself that terrifies them more than anything they could have planned. They were comfortable when you were predictable. They were confident when you stayed where they placed you. But this new expansion, this rapid, uncontrollable rise, it turns their confidence into tremors. It turns their boldness into rehearsed panic. And deep inside, they finally realize that whatever control they thought they had over your story was nothing more than a fantasy collapsing under its own weight. Because now you operate differently. You move differently. You decide differently. You no longer react to the noise. They react to the quiet shift in your energy. You no longer adjust yourself to fit into their expectations. They scramble to adjust to the pressure of your growth. And every new layer of confidence you adopt, every new boundary you reinforce, every new direction you take, becomes a mirror that exposes their limitations. They don't hate your rise. They fear what your rise says about them. They fear what your clarity reveals about their intentions. They fear what your composure exposes about their weakness. And as they watch you expand into spaces they never imagined you'd enter, something begins to crack inside them, not because you did anything wrong, but because you did everything right without needing their validation. They spent so long trying to confine you. They spent so long trying to make you doubt your choices. They spent so long trying to keep you in a position where they felt superior. But now they're forced to confront the fact that all the time they invested in trying to shrink, you only made you sharper, hungrier, and more unshakable. You didn't fit into their design because you weren't meant to. And now they're left staring at the consequences of underestimating someone who was never operating on their level. This expansion you've stepped into isn't loud. It isn't messy. It isn't theatrical. It's strategic. It's intentional. It's rooted in an inner clarity they cannot manufacture, no matter how hard they try. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You're simply becoming the person you were meant to be, while they drown in their attempts to keep up with a version of you that no longer exists. And every time you step into a new elevation, their discomfort grows. Because your growth is the one thing they cannot influence, predict, or stop. You've become the one variable they didn't prepare for, the one shift they didn't see coming, the one transformation they didn't calculate. They spent so much energy building an illusion of control that they never prepared for the moment you would outgrow the frame they placed around you. And now that you've broken out of it, they can't comprehend how to deal with you, because their strategies were only effective when you were operating from a place of limitation. Now that you've tasted real power, the kind that comes from self-awareness, discipline, and emotional autonomy, their influence has no grip. Their tactics have no effect. Their narratives have no weight. Because what can they possibly do to someone who no longer needs their approval? What can they take from someone who already rebuilt themselves from the inside out? What can they manipulate in someone who has become fluent in reading intentions before words are even spoken? That's the part they can't handle. Not your rise, not your glow, not your progress, but the fact that you now see through everything their motives, their insecurities, their disguises, their attempts to mask fear as confidence, envy as advice, insecurity as guidance. You see right through it, and instead of confronting it, you detach. Instead of arguing, you observe. Instead of participating, you rise. And that calm separation destroys them more than any fight ever could. Because detachment is power they cannot touch. Awareness is strength they cannot handle. And growth is momentum they cannot replicate. They expected conflict. They expected chaos. They expected you to break down in frustration. What they didn't expect was your decision to upgrade, to refine yourself, to become someone so internally powerful that their existence doesn't influence your emotional landscape anymore. That is where the real dominance begins. When you no longer fight people, you simply outgrow them. When you no longer respond to manipulations, you erase their significance by refusing to play along. When you no longer take the bait, they suffocate in the emptiness of their own strategies. They wanted you stressed, reactive, defensive. What they received instead was your emotional evolution, your strategic expansion, and your new ability to operate from a world where they no longer exist as obstacles. And the more you expand, the more they realize how little they mattered in the long run. Their attempts to block you become irrelevant. Their attempts to influence you become transparent. Their attempts to limit you become almost comedic in hindsight. Because now you see how small their strategies were compared to the scale of what you're stepping into. They were building walls while you were building wings. They were plotting constraints while you were unlocking versions of yourself they never even considered possible. And now that you're rising, they're left confronting a truth that hurts more than anything else. You didn't just escape their constraints. You outgrew the entire mindset that made you vulnerable to them in the first place. And that is why they spiral. That is why they scramble. That is why they study your every movement with a mix of awe and resentment. You've become unpredictable in the most powerful way, not because you're chaotic, but because you're aligned. You don't move from fear. You don't respond from insecurity. You don't act from desperation. You move from purpose. You act from conviction. You decide from clarity. And people who operate from manipulation cannot compete with someone who now navigates life from pure internal strength. Your expansion exposes everything they wanted to keep hidden. Their jealousy, their sensitivity, their desperation, their inability to evolve. Every new chapter you enter forces them to confront the chapters they never grew past. Every breakthrough you make reminds them of the stagnation they've been denying. Every time you succeed without their approval, their fear tightens around them like a grip they can't escape. Because now they're forced to watch you rise without having any influence over the trajectory. They can't shape it. They can't predict it. They can't interrupt it. And the more visible your growth becomes, the more invisible they feel. The more stable you become, the more unstable they become. The more grounded you are, the more scattered they get, trying to figure out how you pulled away so far, so fast, without warning, without hesitation, without giving them a chance to react. That's the part that hits them the hardest. You didn't leave a trail for them to follow. You didn't leave clues for them to decode. You didn't leave cracks in your armor for them to exploit. You simply rose, cleanly, strategically, quietly. And now they're confronting a truth too sharp to swallow. Your growth was not an accident. It was deliberate. It was disciplined. It was inevitable the moment you stopped looking outward and turned your attention inward. And now that you've expanded beyond their reach, they're left wondering what you'll become next, what new heights you'll reach, what new layers of confidence you'll uncover, what new level of dominance you'll access. Because it's not your current strength that scares them. It's the fact that you're still evolving. It's the fact that you haven't even reached your true potential yet. It's the fact that every time they think they've finally understood you, you shift into another level they didn't expect. And now the narrative has flipped again, not because you forced it, but because you outgrew the version of yourself they could manipulate. Once you expand, there is no shrinking back. Once you evolve, there is no unlearning. Once you taste the power of clarity, there is no returning to confusion. You've stepped into a version of yourself that doesn't negotiate with insecurity. You've stepped into a mindset that doesn't depend on external approval. You've stepped into a future that doesn't require their presence, their permission, or their validation. And as this expansion accelerates, a new realization hits you. Your rise isn't just changing how they see you. It's changing how you see them. Their power wasn't real. Their superiority wasn't real. Their control wasn't real. It was all framed by your old willingness to shrink yourself to maintain peace, maintain relationships, maintain harmony, maintain the illusion that everything was fine. But once you stopped pretending, their influence shattered like glass under pressure. They're not the threat they once appeared to be. They're not the giants they portrayed themselves as. They're not the masterminds they believed they were. They're just individuals who relied on your old uncertainty to feel relevant. And now that uncertainty is gone. Now that the old version of you has dissolved, their presence no longer holds the weight it once did. You see them clearly now, not as enemies, but as small characters in a chapter you've already outgrown. This is why expansion is their punishment, not revenge, not confrontation, not exposure, but growth. Because nothing humiliates those who tried to limit you more than watching you step into mastery. They can't touch, can't copy, can't predict, and can't sabotage. Your rise is the one outcome they never prepared for because they never believed you had the strength to initiate it. And now that you've proven them wrong, they're left trapped in the discomfort of their own underestimation. And just when they think they've seen the full extent of your rise, you shift again. Your boundaries become firmer, your intuition becomes sharper, your decisions become cleaner, your direction becomes clearer. You stop navigating life through reaction and start navigating through intention. You stop giving energy to anything that drains you. You stop bending for those who refuse to grow. And the more you refine yourself, the more untouchable you become. This is only the beginning of your expansion, the beginning of your evolution, the beginning of your quiet dominance that no one can interfere with. And as you step deeper into this new version of yourself, you begin to notice something powerful. The more you grow, the more everything that once pulled you down loses its hold. The more you rise, the more they scramble. The more centered you become, the more off balance they feel. And now, as their panic turns into silence they can't admit, as their confidence collapses into confusion, as their attempts to understand you spiral into frustration, you prepare for something even greater. Not just expansion, but elevation. A shift so profound that it doesn't just change the game, it erases it entirely. You've moved beyond reaction. You've moved beyond defense. You've reached a plane where their strategies, their manipulations, their carefully constructed illusions no longer exist. They operate in the world they built for you. You operate in the world you built for yourself. And the difference is so vast, so visible, that it becomes an unavoidable truth they must face. They don't just see it, they feel it. Every failed calculation, every unreadable move you make, every step you take beyond their reach amplifies their frustration. It's a chaos born not from your action, but from their inability to influence you. And in that chaos, you find your dominance. You don't chase them. You don't confront them. You simply exist as a force they cannot predict, cannot reach, cannot control. Every moment of your presence, every decision executed with clarity, every boundary maintained with unwavering discipline, becomes evidence of a reality they will never understand. Their plans crumble quietly in the shadow of your elevation. And that is the ultimate advantage. The one they can't see, can't calculate, can't anticipate. The elevation that renders their existence in relation to you irrelevant. Because once you step into a higher plane, their strategies lose their weight. Their words lose their sharpness. Their attacks fall flat against the solidity you now carry within yourself. And while they scramble in the fragments of a world that no longer holds you, you move forward, measured, deliberate, untouchable. They will try to reconstruct meaning from their confusion. They will try to retrofit explanations for why you're untouchable. But nothing they devise can reverse the shift, because it isn't built from their understanding. It's built from your truth, your discipline, your mastery. And here is what terrifies them most. The more you rise, the more they realize that you were never in their reality to begin with. Their maps, their rules, their constraints, they never applied to you. And yet they invested so much of themselves in controlling, cornering, and predicting you. They overestimated their importance. They underestimated your ability to transcend. Every obsessive attempt to bind you, every hidden strategy to manipulate you, every whispered plan to destabilize you now exists as evidence of their miscalculation. They are trapped inside the consequences of their own design, forced to witness your rise without the ability to influence it. And you, silently, impeccably, wield your dominance not with noise or confrontation, but with presence. You are an untouchable energy, a principle, a momentum that cannot be negotiated with or distracted. Their attacks, their words, their calculated manipulations, they are futile. Because your power isn't in the response, it's in the existence, the calm, unwavering, unstoppable existence that refuses to shrink, refuses to justify, refuses to react. And the more they attempt to measure you, the more they realize that measurement itself is meaningless. You have entered a frequency, a dimension, a state of being where their influence cannot penetrate. They are observers. You are the axis. They are reacting. You are initiating. And every move they make only illuminates their obsolescence. Every strategy they attempt only reinforces your invisibility to their control. Every panic they feel only proves the reach of your elevation. And in this quiet, calculated dominance, you begin to craft the final stage. Not destruction, not revenge, not exposure, but a demonstration so complete that it requires no confrontation. You are the proof, the living evidence that they were never capable of controlling what was never theirs to control. You are the standard they can't meet, the truth they cannot argue against, the momentum they cannot reverse. Their panic deepens as they watch a life they thought they influenced flourish in ways they cannot touch. Every attempt to understand, to predict, to manipulate is met with clarity and alignment that shatters their expectations. They were confident in their supremacy. They were certain of your predictability. They were assured of your limitations. And every assumption they made has now become a mirror, reflecting their underestimation. They can analyze. They can speculate. They can whisper to one another in attempts to rationalize your presence. But the reality is simple. You are beyond the framework they designed. You are beyond the calculations, beyond the narratives, beyond their comprehension. And that truth carries a dominance they can't reclaim. You move not with ego, but with precision, not with aggression, but with inevitability, not with noise, but with a gravity that pulls attention and respect without force. And as they stumble, trying to reconcile the version of you they imagined with the version of you that exists, they reveal themselves, their insecurities, their envy, their desperation, their fear. And every micro-reaction, every unguarded slip, every miscalculation they make in observing your rise is cataloged in the silent narrative you control. Because the highest form of dominance isn't the clash, it's the quiet certainty of being untouchable, of operating on levels they cannot even perceive. They may have mastered deceit, coordination, manipulation. They may have studied patterns, predicted behavior, exploited weaknesses. But the moment you leave that battlefield, the moment you elevate beyond their reach, all of it collapses. They built tools to manipulate yesterday's version of you. Today, you are an entirely different entity, one that bends no rules, obeys no schemes, and submits to no narrative they try to force. And their frustration grows as they realize everything they built was only effective when you were smaller, slower, dependent, reactive. They believe that domination is enforced externally. You understand that real dominance is internal. It is alignment. It is clarity. It is a state of being that no external force can shake. They cannot take it from you. They cannot challenge it. They cannot imitate it. They can only witness it. And in witnessing it, they crumble further under the weight of their own underestimation. You have moved from defense to mastery, from survival to command, from reaction to creation. And now, their perception of power is shattered because power is no longer a title they can claim. Power is a presence you embody, a presence that organizes chaos around you without effort, a presence that converts every manipulation into an opportunity, a presence that forces them to confront the fact that their entire structure of control is irrelevant. They are spectators. You are the arena. They are trying to rewrite the rules. You are rewriting reality. Every step, every breath, every decision you take at this stage isn't about proving anything. It's about being elevated, being unshakable, being untouchable. And as they scramble, as they panic, as they search for points of leverage that no longer exist, you continue building networks, opportunities, alignment, influence, building momentum in directions they never imagined. Every day, every action, every choice magnifies the contrast between your elevation and their scrambling. They become case studies in miscalculation, examples of the cost of underestimating someone who refuses to remain confined. And the beautiful savage reality is this: they contributed to their own irrelevance. Every trap, every plan, every manipulation designed to control you has now served as a blueprint of their limitations, their fears, their inadequacies. While they were obsessed with constraining you, you were constructing something so durable, so strategically impossible to influence, that their obsession becomes their punishment. You never fought them. You outgrew them. You never confronted them. You outmaneuvered them. You never engaged in the battle they expected. You simply evolved. And the consequences of that evolution are now visible in every faltering move, every panicked assessment, every futile attempt to regain relevance. They can sense it, even if they can't articulate it. You are untouchable, unreachable, unstoppable. Their entire strategy, their entire influence, their entire projection of power is null. And they realize, quietly, bitterly, that they will never regain the foothold they assumed they had. And while they flail in the aftermath of their own miscalculations, you operate in an entirely different dimension. A dimension defined by clarity, dominance, mastery, alignment, and unshakable presence. This is not arrogance. This is fact. This is the consequence of operating beyond their understanding, beyond their reach, beyond their control. And as you continue to elevate, the only way they can engage is by observing your evolution, observing your dominance, observing your absolute control over the narrative of your own life, observing a reality they cannot influence, cannot disrupt, cannot touch. And that observation, that helplessness, that inability to intervene becomes their punishment. And now, as they continue to watch, paralyzed by their inability to influence, you shift into the ultimate stage of dominance. Presence as power, evolution as evidence, detachment as weapon. Every day that passes, every decision you make, every alignment you secure quietly, reinforces the truth they cannot escape. You are untouchable because you exist on a plane where their control, their manipulation, their strategies cannot reach. And while they attempt to reconstruct relevance, they reveal their fragility in the process, their desperation, their envy, their need to explain your elevation to themselves and to the world. They wear it like armor, yet it only exposes their inadequacy. Every lie they try to tell themselves, every rationalization, every excuse is a testament to your unassailable position. They cannot admit it. They cannot articulate it. And that inability, that silent confession of failure, amplifies your dominance. You are untouchable not because you strike, but because you are inevitable. You are the force that exists beyond their comprehension, beyond their reach, beyond their influence. They projected power as a weapon. You embody power as existence. And the distinction is fatal to their ego. It destroys their assumptions, erodes their credibility, exposes their insecurities, and leaves them scrambling in their own irrelevance. They may attempt to replicate your strategies, to mimic your discipline, to fake alignment, but authenticity cannot be copied. Mastery cannot be borrowed. Elevation cannot be stolen. And that is the final edge you wield with surgical precision, the reality they cannot imitate, the success they cannot predict, the dominance they cannot challenge. And as you continue to build, quietly, deliberately, irreversibly, they become secondary in a narrative they once thought they controlled. Every interaction, every observation, every whisper of your presence reinforces the reality. You are the axis. They are satellites orbiting in confusion. They cannot intercept. They cannot engage. They can only watch. And watching is a punishment they cannot escape. Every attempt to regain influence, every effort to understand you, every desperate plan to manipulate outcomes only highlights the truth. They were never in control. They never had the authority, the clarity, the discipline, the alignment required to touch you. And now, they must reckon with it. Their strategies, their manipulations, their schemes, all collapse into irrelevance under the weight of your elevation. And that collapse is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is absolute. It is a reflection of your supremacy, your mastery, your untouchable presence. They cannot scream, they cannot demand, they cannot provoke, they can only witness. And witnessing is a lesson more brutal than confrontation, because every glance they steal, every measurement they attempt, every calculation they make only confirms you are untouchable. And their panic grows, subtly, internally, in ways they cannot admit. They begin to doubt themselves, their methods, their instincts, their capacity to control even the smallest fragment of reality. And that self-doubt is the ultimate consequence. The higher you rise, the smaller they become. The clearer your dominance, the more visible their inadequacy. The more inevitable your evolution, the more impotent their attempts at engagement. And you, meticulously, deliberately, persist. You build without interference, you create without permission, you expand without seeking approval, you dominate without aggression. Your elevation is evidence of precision, discipline, strategy, and clarity. And as you operate in this zone of unstoppable momentum, they are forced to confront the truth they never wanted to see. You were never theirs to contain, never theirs to control, never theirs to predict. And now, every move they make, every plan they execute, every strategy they devise, is a testament to their miscalculation. They are punished by their own obsession, trapped in the consequences of their fixation, helpless to alter the reality you command. And while they flounder, you prosper, you evolve, you expand, you dominate, you build an empire of influence, clarity, power, and alignment that they can see but cannot touch, cannot penetrate, cannot comprehend. And the most exquisite